Good afternoon. I'm Paula Lyne and I'm joined here by Paula Coogan, the Quarter Life Coach, who's here to offer some career advice. So today we're going to be talking about pay rises, how to ask for one, how to negotiate, and most importantly, how to get the amount that you feel you deserve. So we want to hear your questions. So if you do have any, please do comment below. But let's get started anyway. So is there ever a right time to ask for a pay rise? And how long should I wait after starting a role before asking?
That's a really good question. A lot of people are very nervous about asking for pay rises. There's an awful lot of anxiety around it as well. But there are certain specific times that are really, really good times. Not what you'd think. Some people think that waiting until their annual review or performance review is the best time. It's not, because salary budgets normally are developed and agreed upon about 3 months beforehand. So the right time to ask is about 3 months, maybe 14 weeks before your annual review is a great time to approach your boss to talk about a pay rise. Another good time would be, let me see, if you have just taken on a really hard to staff assignment. So if it was something that they were finding it difficult to fill and you took on that role. Or another really good time is if you've just finished a really successful project for the company and you're about to embark onto something else. That's also a really great time to sit down with your boss and say, this is what we've done, this is what I'm doing next, can we talk about the compensation moving forward?
Okay.
So not what you'd think, but...
Yeah, so rather than going by schedules, going by your own personal performance.
Yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
interesting. A reader question in here from someone who works in computer science. So I started working right out of college on a salary of $24,000 a year. I didn't realise at the time that the going rate of pay was far higher, and I'm now there 18 months. What's a reasonable jump in salary to ask for at my next review?
Okay.
Or next time I feel I should ask?
Yeah, it's a really good question. A lot of people find themselves in that position where they go into a job, they're just out of college and they're really excited and they get it and they get the offer and they're like, yes, I'm in. But then they realise, hang on a second, I'm not being paid as much as some kind of classmates or other people. So let me see. Really, in terms of kind of looking at what would be a good jump, again, you do need to go back, do the research and find out, okay, how much is it that people with your skills, with your experience, with your background, with your education are earning, and look at what have you done over the last 18 months? What is the impact that your work is having on the company? So there is an awful lot of work that needs to go into asking for a pay rise. You have to do your research, you have to plan, you have to put it together. I don't know off the top of my head what would be a reasonable jump. But that individual really needs to themselves really have a look at the scales that are there and the work that they're doing and how it would impact, and go in with that in mind, with that evidence, with that kind of with that research to ask that question.
Yeah, and we actually have a question in from a viewer. So where can I go to see what other people in the same field are earning or should be earning? Okay.
Many people don't know this. Well, the first time I ever came across it, I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. There are websites called payscale.com. I think there's Glassdoor.com. I'm not sure if there's Glassdoor.ie, but there's definitely with the Glassdoor.com, you can put in your location, where you are, your job title, and it will bring up kind of ranges of salaries that are there for that particular role. If you can't find your particular job title, just play around with it a little bit, try and see what would be as close to it as you can find. And what was the other thing? Yeah, it's different with location as well. You'll find that there is a difference based if the jobs are in Dublin or London and things like that.
Yes. Okay, interesting. Now, another one, I know that I bring value to my role and I'm a strong addition to the company, but how do I measure and show that value when I'm asking for a pay rise? So that's someone who's kind of saying, I think I'm great, but how do I prove that to my employer?
That's a good one. Because sometimes, like, you go into work and you know you're doing a really good job, you're enjoying the work, you're hitting the targets, you're doing your thing, but maybe that's not, you're not getting the recognition, either verbally or financially from work. But really, what I think is you need to look at what are the problems that you are solving for the business.
Yes.
That's what the business cares about. that's what kind of it is kind of what you're there to do. So just know the impact of your particular work. So things that they would be interested in, kind of when you know what the problems are that you're solving, it's like, how much money did you bring in? It depends on your role. So it could be how much money did you bring in? How much money did you save? What problems did you solve for the company? What projects did you complete successfully? Make a note of all of these different things that you do. Maybe it's customer service rates, that you improve them. Maybe you improve processes. There's lots of different kind of measurements that you can take. So if you know what's most important to your company and then align, you kind of tweak the data just a little bit, you know what I mean? To make sure that the results that you're bringing in to them are the results that they actually care about.
Yes, and I know people are kind of wary sometimes of being seen to blow their own trumpet, but are you saying that you should blow your own trumpet in these cases?
So many people are so afraid that I don't want to be seen as cocky, I don't want to be seen as too big for my boots, I don't want them to turn around, well, who does she think she is? That's so common, but you do need to value yourself. You do need to have an appreciation of the impact that you make there. One of my clients recently, she was saying that recognition, praise, feedback isn't very forthcoming in her job. But what she started to do was create a folder anytime she got a thank you from a client or a customer or anything like that, where anytime she got feedback anywhere, she just kind of put it all together. And then when it came to negotiating a pay rise or anything like that, she had a lot of things put together already.
Brilliant idea, yes.
So it was like any feedback that she got throughout the year just went into, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, kind of boost my confidence file or something.
Yeah, I'm grateful.
Yeah, I am grateful. But yeah, just keep everything together, and that's a good way to go.
Yeah, brilliant, great point. Kind of on that point, another one in from a viewer: should overtime be taken seriously? So how do you account for overtime in the hours that you've done? So if you're someone who is clocking up extra hours outside of the 9 to 5, do you mention that in your meeting when you're asking for a pay rise?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. It depends. If your job when you started said that there was going to be a lot of overtime hours,
as some do,
as there's a lot of do nowadays. Sometimes it is expected, but if you're not being compensated by that for even extra holidays or something in return, then you definitely need to bring it in as. Yeah, you do need to bring it in as a factor, but it's not the strongest argument for a pay rise.
Yes.
Because if you're saying I work really hard, I work long hours, your manager's feedback on that, well, we all do. So it's not in itself a really strong one, but definitely make note of it. You could kind of twist it into, it's the loyalty, it's the determination you have to make sure that the job is done. So reframe it in a certain way.
Paint the picture.
Paint the picture, exactly.
Okay. This one in from a reader. I work in quite a small company and we don't have performance reviews. So how do I actually approach the topic of a raise with my boss out of the blue? Should I send an email or try to catch my manager alone after a meeting?
Okay, that's good. Personally, I much prefer companies that don't have those kind of standardised performance appraisals, because it is quite rigid. So it's a great opportunity in the first place. Don't send an email.
Okay.
Definitely, you can send an email to schedule a meeting, but don't send an email saying, I want a pay rise. Subject line, pay me more. There's a lot of work to do before you have that sit down with your boss, before you have that conversation. A lot of the time you only get one shot at presenting your case for a pay rise initially, and you want to make sure that you have the strongest case possible. So you can send an email, absolutely, or say to your boss, would you have time in the next week or so to sit down? I want to talk about my path in the company.
Yep.
And what you do then is you kind of you take some time, you look at what is it that you want to do in the company over the next 12 to 18 months. What are the jobs that you're going to take on? What are the projects you're going to take on? What skills are you going to kind of work on and build? What are you going to give to the company? And you have to make sure that it's in alignment with what the company is actually like they care about what their problems are. And then you have that chat with your boss. You sit down, you go through, this is the plan, this is what I want to do. You get your boss's agreement on it and say, this is what I feel the compensation should be for this. And it's a very different type of conversation that a lot of people are used to having.
Yes.
But it's a much more empowered conversation. One of the things that I love to say to people is to become the CEO of your own career. And it was one of my coaching mentors that actually kind of said that to me about my own business. But CEO being the chief enabling officer, that you are the chief enabling officer of your own career. So you need to work it as if you are a consultant. Do you know what I mean? Imagine like a self-employed person coming and they're pitching. Do it that way. It's a different way, but it really, really does work. It's like, this is the results that you'll get. This is the compensation that I would like.
That you would like. And that kind of brings me on to the next question, yes, which is, I've been offered a rise in pay, but it's not what I want. I feel I'm worth more. So should I negotiate? How do I negotiate? Or is that the bottom line?
It's never the bottom line.
Right.
Yes, you should always negotiate, but you need to go in with, again, I know I'm saying this quite a lot, to have done your research.
Yes.
To have put the work in, to have a really strong business case for you to have that pay rise. So let me see. Should you? I'd never.
Because I know some employers will say, look, this is all I have. And some might just give you a figure. So it's hard to know, I guess, if you should come back with another amount or not. Would you say always do if you're not happy?
Try and negotiate. And if you're getting absolutely nowhere with them, then don't withdraw immediately. If you have done your research and you've done your plan and you have, this is the path that I see myself going down for the next 12 to 18 months, what do I need to do to get me to the salary that I feel like I deserve?
Okay.
So have that conversation, engage your boss, your supervisor in that conversation, and let them know that you're serious about it. And if they still say, there's nothing I can do, my hands are tied, there are a couple of other things. You could negotiate for something else.
Yes.
Or you've learned something from that conversation. And if you've done your research and you know that outside of your employer's walls, that your skills and your experience and who you are is worth an awful lot more, then it might be time to consider spreading the wings.
Yes, and on that note, a question from Mark, who's watching. I haven't had a pay rise in 7 years and was told there was no chance of getting one, so I'm going to get a new job instead. Is this a better approach?
Yes.
Okay, it is.
I'm very passionate about this. So I would. I get very annoyed with people when people are stuck in jobs that are just not valuing them.
Okay.
From just that brief kind of question, I would definitely think that Mark is suffering from a phenomenon known as salary compression.
Okay.
But that's basically what happens when you stay in a company for a long time. That they might have teeny 2 to 3% pay increases. That might be the standard rate, and you stay there. And what's happening is, outside of, again, your employer's walls, in the talent marketplace, outside your job, your skills, your experience, the rates are going sky high.
Okay.
Not sky high, but they're improving at a much faster rate than what you're being paid. So if Mark has approached his boss, his supervisor, if Mark has tried to have that conversation, and has gotten nowhere with it, well then Mark needs to really look after himself. Sometimes it doesn't pay to be loyal. That's a bit controversial, but...
And what if someone is in a job and they are getting incremental pay rises? Do you still think after a certain period of time it can be worth looking outside?
Absolutely. Now, it depends on the individual. Some people... Yeah, it really does depend on the individual. Some people, money isn't the most important thing. Some people really, for them, they value security, they value stability. So for them, if that's more important than the finances, then it might suit them better to stay where they are with that kind of incremental, it could be the working conditions, the culture, the flexibility suits them. So it really is an individual choice, but you need to ask yourself the question, what's most important to me in my career? Where do I want to go? Where do I see myself going in the next year, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah.
And have that kind of plan in place.
Yeah, good point. A question on targets. So obviously some companies have targets, and that's something good that you can use when you're leveraging for a pay rise. This person says, I don't necessarily make my targets on a regular basis. So is there still a way to ask for a pay rise without being refused?
Without being refused. It's a tricky one. And a lot of places do have kind of very strict policies in place around the targets that you have to do X, Y, Z in order to get a pay rise. I'd be curious. I'd definitely engage in a conversation with your manager and just sit down and say, look, this is my hopes for my salary and my progression within the company. These are the targets. There might be a reason why you're not making the targets. Maybe the targets are too high. I'm not sure. It really depends on an individual basis. But perhaps your skills could be used elsewhere in the company. You might look at a different role. It could be a sideways move that you make within the company that might bring you into a different place where you might be able to move towards the salary that you want. But I think a lot of companies definitely do use targets as these kind of baselines that if you don't hit your targets, you don't get the pay increase. So use that knowledge to go from a different approach, a different angle. And what else can I do? What needs to happen for me to
get to where I want
to be? And what support do I need from the company? Do I need extra training? Do I need extra support?
Brilliant. Yeah, good point. This one in from someone who works in a state-funded company. So I approached my boss back in January about a raise, but he said his hands were tied and to try again in 6 months. Other people in the company are doing the same role as me on a higher pay grade. So what should my next step be? And can I ask for other perks? Interesting one there.
Yeah.
Not just money.
A lot of companies will, a lot of managers will say, my hands are tied, there's nothing I can do. But I do guarantee you that there are people in that company getting pay rise.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It is. And an interesting thing that kind of happens is, you know, the anxiety that we talked about at the beginning about people have about kind of going to their boss and asking for a pay rise, and they have to battle those inner demons and what will they think of me? If your boss has to go to a higher manager, then he or she will probably have the same internal kind of demons, and they might be nervous about approaching their boss, so they might not want to.
Okay.
And it's just something to be aware of. So what you really, really need to do is you need to, going back to what we were talking about earlier, really make a business case for your pay rise. Do your research, make sure that your manager is on your team. Because if you don't have your direct supervisor kind of sold on the idea that you deserve it and that they want to keep you, and that they're going to do whatever it takes, it's not going to progress, especially in state companies.
Yes. So it's about more than just the question, isn't it?
It really is. Like, you need to sell the seller, I suppose.
Yeah.
And until you do, you're not going to progress with it. But in terms of kind of asking for something else instead, it's a brilliant question. A lot of people don't think of it. But many companies, they could have in place like a bonus which doesn't interfere with the pay scales, because a lot of companies don't want to kind of, if they increase someone's pay and everyone's on the same sort of scale, then that will impact everyone else. But a one-off bonus is something that could be worked on with particular targets in place to meet that. Okay. Another thing, education. You could ask, is there any sort of education fund, if there's any particular training that you want to do? And this is really useful, and why I kind of say to people, please, please, please take your career seriously. Be that CEO of your career so that you know in 12 months' time, this is where I want to be, this is where I want to go. So you'll know what training you need, what skills you need to develop, what projects you need to work on, so that you can maneuver yourself to where you want to be while you're stuck in a rut. Do you know what I mean? So the education you can ask for, if you travel a lot with work, a lot of people have asked for kind of membership to airport lounges and things like that. There's just small things that make a big difference.
It's a lot of money at the end of the day that you're saving. Yeah,
it absolutely is. Flexibility, extra holidays is something else. If you're a membership of a professional body, you can ask for your fees to be paid. Lots of different things.
Okay, and another
job
one.
Title, sorry, is another one.
A job title.
Yeah,
yes.
to change your job title, because that might open up doors for you later on.
True. Finally, one more in here from a viewer. What level of pay rise is reasonable to ask for? So we've kind of covered that, but should you always have a figure in mind?
Yeah, you really do need to have a figure in mind. There is a bit of debate as to whether you
give the figure or wait,
because sometimes it is like if you're asking for like a 3,000 pay rise and you start with that, your boss might have been willing to give you 5, but you would know that's happened to me.
So how do you kind of approach that then? How do you go about it?
Have a minimum in place that you want, and you will have to negotiate. It is very rare that you state a figure or and your boss agrees, so you will have to negotiate. So start a bit higher, but do have it backed up with the reasons why what you impact your work has. A lot of people just don't know the impact that their work has on the company, so they really need to know that. But yeah, you need, like, take into account the company size, how the company's doing, whether they've kind of had a really good year, where it is, the number of employees. There's lots of things to consider when you're talking about a reasonable pay request.
And in terms of kind of selling yourself, what are some lines you should be throwing in that conversation?
Good question. You threw me on that one. Personally, I personally don't like the line selling yourself.
Okay.
Even though I probably use it quite a lot when I'm talking about this, because it's the language that we use. It's really, for me, I think so many people just need to open their eyes to the value that they bring, and they don't know it. It shouldn't, not necessarily that it shouldn't be that you need to sell yourself, okay? But it's like if you're coming from a place where you know that you are doing a really good job, that you're making a difference, that the contribution that you're making is impacting the company, and not just from the tasks that you do, the duties that you complete on a day-to-day basis, but from who you are as a person, because that's something that a lot of us forget about. It's kind of our soft skills, it's our emotional intelligence, it's our kind of our presence in the office that makes a difference, and that's what makes someone really, really valuable. People can learn how to do a job, but having that kind of that person who is just a really good team member, it's hard to buy that.
Invaluable, I would say. That's about all we have time for today. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions by email and on Facebook too. Thank you, Paula Coogan, the Quarter Life Coach, for joining us and sharing your expertise to go fast. And thank you for watching. We'll be back next month with another Career Dilemma.